Apostles of Art, William Morris. In this series, continued from last month's successful interview, when a portrait of William Morris was published, it is intended to set before students of art some account from authoritative sources of the great modern teachers, their life and doctrine. This first article is republished from a lecture delivered by Mr. F.S. Ellis before the Applied Art section of the Society of Arts, in whose journal it subsequently appeared. I think it may fairly be said that the life work of William Morris, as given to the world, began in his student days with the founding of the Oxford and Cambridge magazine. From the way he mentions this publication, I infer that Mr. Vallance was unaware that Morris bore the sole cost of its production. Under such circumstances, it is remarkable that it should have lasted through a year. I should think its doing so was due only to Morris's hatred of anything incomplete. The 12 months rounded it off, so to speak. Mr. Vallance mentions, as though it were a fact, that Morris kept a copy of this book under lock and key by reason of the great store he set upon it. This statement must be due to some misunderstanding, for he certainly set no store whatever by the volume, and kept nothing under lock and key. Even his watch key was usually astray. The same writer discusses the question of reprinting such articles as Morris wrote for the magazine. Of that, I can only say that I should regard it as a ghoulish proceeding, and a dishonor to the author's memory, who again and again forbade their reproduction. I am happy in thinking that there are yet some years before anyone dare reprint these articles without permission, and that before that time arrives I shall, in all likelihood, be beyond the knowledge of such matters. Having emancipated himself from the prospect of a clerical career, what could be more natural than that he should look to the practice of architecture as a profession, and with that idea attract himself to the man who was in those days looked upon as an oracle in that branch of art? But a year's experience in Mr. Street's office, and the clearer perception of what architecture should be, more especially that Gothic architecture, to the love of which his soul was wedded, caused him to see the impossibility, under present conditions, of attaining to and carrying out his ideas, and he therefore sacrificed the remaining term of his articles and turned his attention to other matters. That William Morris might with success have followed the profession of a painter is demonstrated by the excellent portrait of his wife, painted before his marriage in 1859, which has come to light during the past year, after being for a long period supposed to be lost altogether. But I believe that he felt, as a painter, he would be overshadowed by the surpassing genius of his most intimate friend. His own saying was that he could not make his figures move. That he did not persevere in his studies in that direction was assuredly a great gain to the world at large, for, whatever distinction he might have gained as a painter and a poet, it is obviously impossible that he could in that case have achieved the great work as a handicraftsman and designer for which all those who have any eyes for beauty are so largely in his debt. The year 1858 is marked as an important one in his life, by the publication of his first volume of poems. It is no wonder, seeing how entirely original was the note struck by William Morris, that the book was not very heartily received by the public. It would have been a marvel had it been otherwise. It was offered to several publishers, and among others to Lister J. W. Parker, proprietor of Fraser's magazine, a person considerably esteemed in those days, as I well remember, for a man of taste and a fine critic. He declined to publish the volume, and after it appeared had, as appears from a letter which has lately come to light, no better idea of the value of the verse than that 19/20 of it was the most obscure, watery, mystical, affected stuff possible. The genuine and earnest medievalism of the author was altogether lost on Mr. Parker. That the volume was not an immediate success is not, as I have said, to be wondered at, for no book that is out of harmony with the spirit of the age can be expected to succeed, until interest in the movement of it is awakened. Two young men, who in their maturity are still among us, Dr. Garnett, who has honored me by his presence in the chair today, and Mr. Joseph Knight, raised their voices, through the press, in appreciation of the new singer, but that the volume had not a very rapid sale was evidenced by the fact, that some 7 years later, I bought from Messrs. Bell and Daldy the copies that then remained unsold, amounting, if I remember rightly, to some 30 or 40. But that the defense of Guinevere met with no greater appreciation on its first appearance is, I think, easily accounted for, unless the reader has some knowledge of the romance of King Arthur and chronicles of Froissart, and, indeed, of the medieval spirit generally, it must be mere affectation to pretend to understand and enjoy the poems in Morris's first publication, as well might an Oriental who had never heard of London affect to enjoy the humours of Pickwick. A good deal has been said about printing other poems written about the same date, which the author preferred to leave unpublished. I am happy in knowing that the one person, whose authority would be needed for the publication of them, has decided against it, and will, I trust, make such provision as shall prevent them being put into print at any future period. He was too capable a critic of his own work for there to be any justification for publishing that which he desired to consign to oblivion. Architecture and painting abandoned as the occupations of his life, William Morris's practical mind addressed itself to the task of showing that it was possible, while perforce shutting one's eyes to the exterior hideousness of ordinary houses, to do something towards making the interiors more tasteful and beautiful than they had been for many a long year, reversing, in fact, the old saying concerning the cup and the platter.